I was on my way to deliver an order from the sandwich shop I worked at. It was a quiet night, probably around 11 or so. I had my music playing in the car, just going through the motions of the delivery. While heading toward their neighborhood, I pulled up at a red light. There wasn't a single other car at the intersection, but for some reason, the light stayed red for what felt like an unusually long time. As I sat there, waiting for the light to change, just staring at it, a car pulled up next to me. I only glanced at it for a moment, didn't really want to make awkward eye contact. Their windows were heavily tinted, definitely beyond legal limits, because I couldn't see a thing through them. The car itself was black too, maybe an old Toyota or something similar. I couldn't really tell exactly what it was, but it gave me a weird, uneasy feeling. Maybe it was just because we were the only two cars on the road. I'm not totally sure. Eventually, the light turned green and I started driving again. But I didn't make it far before I noticed they hadn't moved at all. They were still just sitting at the intersection. Once I got further down the road, I brushed it off, thinking it was just strange and nothing more. A few minutes later, I turned into the housing area for the delivery. I wouldn't exactly call it a neighborhood. It was more like a row of 10 or so houses that led into a dead end. There was something really unsettling about it. None of the houses had a single light on. Honestly, I would have assumed the whole street was abandoned if it weren't for how well kept the homes looked. They were normal suburban houses. Nothing visibly wrong with them. I figured it was just a weird coincidence that every single person on that street had their lights off. The delivery address I had was for the second to last house. I parked along the curb, grabbed the order, and headed up to the door. I was hoping to at least see some light coming from inside the windows, since this was the house I was delivering to, but there was nothing. Standing on the porch, I knocked reluctantly. When I did, the door moved slightly on its hinges, like it hadn't been properly shut or locked. That was definitely strange. "Sandwich delivery, anyone home?" I called out. There was nothing. Total silence. Not a single sound came from inside. I was about to leave, but just to be sure, I pushed the door open a little farther. I could see into a hallway and a room, both completely empty. No furniture, no decorations, not even a single photo on the wall. Within seconds, I saw dust beginning to drift through the doorway. I shut the door and stepped back off the porch, confused and starting to feel a little uneasy. As I walked back to my car, I noticed something a few houses down the street. A small black car had appeared, one that definitely wasn't there when I first arrived. Its headlights were off, and it was parked silently. When I caught sight of the tinted windows, I immediately recognized it. My stomach dropped. There was no way this could just be a coincidence. I picked up my pace, hurrying to my car. But just a few feet from the road, I caught movement in the reflection of one of the car windows. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but I froze. I was standing near the passenger side door, and through the window, my eyes landed on the back seat. It was dark, but something was blocking the back window. It only took me a second to realize what I was looking at. I turned around and ran straight back to the house. As I did, the back door of my car swung open, and a man dressed in a black hoodie and black pants came sprinting out. He didn't chase after me though. He ran directly down to the road and jumped into his car. I stayed on the porch, heart pounding, and called 911. Honestly, I probably could have just gotten into my car and driven off, but I was too shaken to think clearly. When the police showed up, they immediately told me that no one lived on the street. Apparently, all the houses were new builds. I guess that explains why they looked so well kept and not abandoned. What I didn't expect to hear was that they'd gotten multiple reports just like mine over the past week. Apparently, this guy would place a fake order using a fake name and address, then follow the delivery driver. What happened to me was the closest call so far. The guy had somehow slipped into my car and was waiting, maybe for me to drive off. Who knows what he had planned? Unfortunately, there haven't been any updates on catching him. This all happened last year, toward the beginning of December. One of my close friends was going on a week-long trip with his family and asked me if I'd house sit for them while they were away. We were pretty tight family friends, so it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. I'd actually done the same thing for them the year before. They had a few fish tanks and a lot of houseplants that needed taken care of, and in exchange, I got to stay at their house for a week. Since I lived in a really small apartment, I was more than happy to accept the offer and help out. I showed up a couple of hours before they left so I could hang out and get a quick refresher on what I needed to do. Once they were gone, I unpacked a few things and got settled in. Around 6 o'clock, I went out to grab some dinner. I brought it back and ate in the living room while watching TV. About half an hour later, there was a knock at the door. I paused what I was watching and got up to see who it was. Standing outside was a man in his 30s, not wearing a delivery outfit or anything, just looking like a regular guy. I cracked the door open and asked what he wanted. He seemed surprised to see me at first, but quickly recovered and asked if my friend was home. He actually used my friend's name, so I assumed maybe he was a friend or acquaintance. I told him he'd have to come back another time. He didn't ask anything else, just turned around and walked away. I probably should have asked what he needed exactly, but I felt like if it was important, he should have told me right away. Still, I sent my friend a quick text just to let him know someone had come by. He called me back not long after, and after a short chat, said he had no clue who that guy could have been. I kept an eye out the rest of the evening, though I still figured it was probably nothing serious. I watched some more TV, then went around watering the plants and feeding the fish. Around 9 o'clock, I started getting the couch ready to sleep on. I laid out a few blankets and made a little bed for myself. That's when there was another knock at the door. I walked over, more confused than anything. But the moment I saw, it was the same guy standing there again. I felt uneasy. This time I didn't open the door. "Hey, what do you want? Can you come back another time?" I shouted through the door. The man just stood there, listening, staring at the door like he was thinking about something. But instead of answering, he turned and walked away again. I double-checked that the door was locked, then went back to the couch. Looking back, that's when I should have called the police. But for some reason, I didn't want to, especially being in someone else's house. I kept thinking maybe it was all just a misunderstanding. The guy hadn't actually done anything yet. It felt silly to call and say, "Hey, someone knocked on the door twice and didn't say much." Still, I was definitely on edge. I stayed up on my phone for a while and kept the window curtains open, just in case he showed up again. I think I waited at least 2 hours before my eyes started getting heavy. I did one final sweep of the windows, then closed the curtains and started getting ready for bed. I brushed my teeth and then jumped in the shower for a quick rinse. By the time I got out, dried off, and headed back downstairs, less than 10 minutes had passed. I walked around, turning off all the lights. And before heading to bed, I figured I'd do one last check out the windows, just to help ease my mind. I looked outside, saw only trees swaying in the wind and the empty road in front of the house. I stepped back, and as I made my way over to the couch, my eyes caught something strange about the front door. The lock was turned sideways. I walked up thinking, maybe I was just seeing it wrong. But no, it was definitely unlocked. I was absolutely certain I had locked it. Not even a sliver of doubt in my mind. I froze for a moment before a rush of adrenaline hit me. I spun around and crept to the couch to grab my phone off the end table. But it wasn't there. Someone had already taken it. I didn't waste another second. I grabbed my keys and bolted out the front door. Using my car's emergency button, I called 911 while pulling out of the driveway and parking further down the road to wait. When the police arrived and searched the house, they found the man, the same guy who'd come by twice, sitting silently in one of the spare bedrooms. He didn't say a word during the arrest, like he was completely mute. They found a forged key in his pocket that matched the front door, and no one could explain how he got it. My friend swore again that he had no idea who the man was or why he'd break in. But honestly, it felt like there was something he wasn't telling me. Strangely, we haven't spoken much since then either. I still don't know what would have happened that night if I hadn't noticed the door was unlocked. If I had just gone to bed, I don't think I would have woken up. Music. It was just a regular night after work. I got home at 10 o'clock, completely exhausted, but still planning to stay up late and game. My friends had to work early the next morning, so I was playing solo, just relaxing. A few hours in, I heard what sounded like a knock. I took off my headphones and listened again, but everything was quiet now. I figured it had to have been a knock at the front door. It had been loud, and I couldn't think of anything else it could have been. I went over to check, but no one was there. The more I thought about it, the stranger it seemed. A single knock is odd if someone's actually at the door. Still, unsure what I'd heard, I went back to gaming. Maybe 30 minutes later, I heard another sound. A sort of click, like something quietly closing. I instantly took off my headset and looked behind me. But again, the house was completely silent. I stood up and did a walkthrough, not checking every corner, just looking for anything obvious. The house is old, so usually I blame sounds like this on creaky wood or aging parts of the place. After a quick look around and not finding anything, that's exactly what I did. And I returned to my desk. I was hesitant to put the headset back on, but eventually I did. Only a few minutes later, though, I saw something. Movement reflected in my computer screen. Maybe it was just a shadow, I don't know, but I jumped up and spun around. This time I felt it. I knew someone was in the house. Someone had just walked behind me. My desk sits in the living room, and behind it is a hallway with 3 rooms ending at the front door. I paused, trying to think. What direction had the reflection moved? From the left side of the hall to the right, the only door on the right, was my bedroom. In that moment, the silence in the house felt deafening. Each second dragged on, growing heavier with fear, knowing deep down someone was probably in that room. I knew my best shot was to just run. I had to make it to the front door and hope no one came out after me. After a few long seconds, I forced myself to move. I sprinted down the hallway and out the front door. I didn't hear anything behind me as I fled. I called the police and waited outside for what felt like forever. When they finally went in and came back out with a man in handcuffs, I was stunned. I knew someone had broken in, but seeing it with my own eyes felt surreal. The guy looked to be around 55, large build, with a wild beard and wide bloodshot eyes that didn't blink much. Just looking at him made my skin crawl. Even worse, they found 2 knives on him. Apparently, there was no clear reason. He had picked me. No motive, which was supposed to be comforting, I guess, but honestly, it just made it scarier. That means he was completely unhinged, capable of doing anything without warning if he had the chance. I think I got unbelievably lucky that night, just to still be standing here today.